As I said on the very first trip to the oil patch back in 2012, no country would find 173 billion barrels of oil in the ground and just leave them there. The resource will be developed. Our job is to ensure that this is done responsibly, safely, and sustainably.
Alberta, the Canadian province known for its natural beauty, sprawling cities, and the Calgary Stampede. Within this picturesque landscape, there is a significant natural resource that plays a pivotal role in shaping Canada's economic condition and the state of global energy: the vast and controversial oil sands. With an area of nearly 150,000 square kilometers, greater than the entire country of Greece, Alberta's oil sands are paramount to the world's most prevalent source of energy: petroleum. Our story begins in the Paleozoic era, approximately 500 million years ago. What is now Alberta was once engulfed by a flourishing marine ecosystem of a complex food web. As organisms decomposed and drifted to the ocean floor, their organic matter was buried under layers and layers of sediment, which exerted massive amounts of heat and pressure onto it. The pressure transformed the dead organisms into kerogen, a waxy compound made of complex hydrocarbons. The kerogen then undergoes a process called catagenesis, which separates it and forms crude oil. Now, why did this happen in Alberta, and why not literally anywhere else in the world? Alberta's abundance of oil sands can be credited to the warm, tropical climate it experienced millions of years ago, facilitating the growth of algae and populating the marine food chain. Millions of years later, the First Nations were the first to encounter crude oil at the surface, boiling it and extracting its bitumen, which they used to waterproof canoes. In 1921, Dr. Carl Clark at the University of Alberta discovered a method of extracting bitumen in larger quantities, which led the company Great Canadian Oil Sands to open the first large-scale extraction facility in 1967. The second commercial oil sands mine was started by Imperial Oil, a subsidiary of ExxonMobil, in 1978. They were the pioneers of oil exploration in Alberta, testing in-situ extraction and a new method called steam-assisted gravity drainage, or SAGD. Today, there are 6 megamines and 30 facilities that use SAGD in the Alberta oil sands. The number one use of crude oil is for generating electricity, where it gets burned to produce steam, spinning a turbine in the process. And although only 1.3% of Canada's electricity is generated by burning oil, we export over 4.7 million barrels each day. Crude oil is also refined into gasoline or diesel, which are essential for all combustion engine-powered vehicles, including Canada's 30 million cars. An overlooked but nonetheless crucial use of petroleum is in the petrochemical industry. Petrochemicals are the chemical compounds formed as a result of refining petroleum, such as acetylene, ethane, ethylene, methane, and propylene. They're ubiquitous in our everyday lives, found in plastics, consumer electronics, paints, textiles, pharmaceuticals, packaging, and many, many more. In fact, Canada's high standard of living can be attributed to its high availability of domestic petrochemicals. The petrochemical industry in Canada alone is worth $8.2 billion. Lastly, when oil is distilled, asphalt can be obtained for paving new roads and highways. Although the uses of petroleum are innumerable, extracting it from oil sands is an extremely controversial industry due to its disruption of the carbon cycle. Carbon is a part of every living organism, and it's naturally released through evaporation and erosion. However, enormous amounts of carbon are sequestered or trapped underground in the form of hydrocarbons in oil and natural gas. But since the Industrial Revolution, we've aggressively extracted and burned oil, disrupting the balance of sequestered and active carbon. As we already know, this triggers the greenhouse effect, causing global warming and rising sea levels. Another controversy with oil extraction is the fact that it is, and will always be, non-renewable. This implies that it will eventually reach peak oil, when the industry extracts the highest possible amount of oil, and this is expected to happen around 2028 or 2029. In addition, the habitat loss caused by oil extraction is devastating and highly detrimental to the biodiverse subarctic ecosystems. Pollutants released during the extraction process contaminate local air and water so severely that First Nations groups say that their existence is being threatened by new developments in the Alberta oil sands. These pollutants are carcinogenic, causing an aggressive and barely survivable type of duct bile cancer. On the other hand, multinational corporations insist that they can reduce environmental impacts with innovation and stricter regulations. Meanwhile, the provincial government, led by Alberta's progressive conservatives, is in full support of the developments. After all, Alberta's energy sector employs a whopping 150,000 people, 3 times more than Ontario. In a nutshell, the 3 different parties involved in this issue have extremely conflicting viewpoints. So where do we go from here? It's clear that Canada as a country relies on petroleum now more than ever, so bringing extraction to a complete halt is out of the question. Instead, we must look to renewable energy as a potential major export, specifically taking advantage of Alberta's volcanic landforms to produce geothermal energy and ramping up our production of hydropower. Furthermore, the expansion of harmful petroleum extraction sites should be prohibited to, in a way, cut our losses and prevent further damage. And as these developments take place on land belonging to the First Nations communities, they should be at the forefront of decision-making when it comes to what happens to oil sands developments. In conclusion, Canada must pivot towards sustainable energy alternatives, restrict the expansion of environmentally damaging extraction sites, and prioritize the inclusion of First Nations communities for matters relating to their land in order to navigate a responsible and balanced energy future.